time that you needed a prayer? Was it when you or a loved one was having surgery? Or maybe it was when a loved one passed from your eyes. Maybe it was when you were making a life decision. Or maybe it was when you were overwhelmed by the troubles and the sadness in the world. You know, we reach out for prayer when we feel vulnerable or when we feel small. We reach out when we don't know what else to do because everything that we've done to figure this world out and to make it all right and to make it comfortable isn't working anymore. And then the light bulb goes on and we remember, oh, God, a prayer. And we have that longing to remember that God is here, that we are not alone. It's a powerful thing to remember prayer, isn't it? It's a powerful thing. For prayer is the way that we connect with God in a very deep way. It is what I call conscious communion with and in God. Conscious communion. We don't really typically live the words of Paul when he says, every thought is a prayer. I really, honest to God, don't live that. And I pray that every thought I have does not turn into a prayer. That would be a huge mistake. But we won't go there. Where we will go is to the call and the need to live in prayer more fully. When we want to open up to that, and when we do, we recognize that we are released from what I call the clutches of our humanity. Do you know what I mean by the clutches of humanity? Have you ever been gripped by those thoughts, those fears, those anticipations, those ruminations, and it just feels like you can't get out of it? And so it feels like that it's a clutching on my consciousness. I wake up that way sometimes. Do you ever wake up like that? Where my thoughts have been processed during the night, and I've made up a huge scenario in my dream life, all my unprocessed stuff, and I wake up anxious because my human mind has been working overtime with anxiety or fear or something like that. Prayer releases those clutches from our human thinking and our human way of being. And it opens up who we are, so we are transported to the divinity of who and what we are. And what a wonderful thing it is to know that the divinity within us that Paul referenced earlier in the second principle, that the divinity within us is where we can truly live. And know that as we are transported into the truth of our divinity, that doesn't mean that we don't face things or that we don't deal with things or that we don't experience this world and what it's about. But it means that we recognize that we have other ways of being that transcend just the human collective consciousness from which so many people, unfortunately, only live. We have within us the ability to live from the truth of our being. And when I can embrace any situation, any condition from that place of knowing through prayer, I come to a greater understanding. I am empowered to act and not become disenchanted. And I am moved forward in the power and the love and the very strength that is God. In unity, we say there is one presence and there is one power. It is God, absolute good. Absolute good. And when I pray, I move into this knowing that there is one presence and there is one power, God, that no matter what is going on, no matter whether I am jubilant and celebrating, or whether I am in sorrow and overwhelmed with sadness, that one presence, the one power that is God, is with me, and it brings goodness. It brings the goodness of joy and gratitude. It brings the goodness of faith, wisdom, and understanding. Prayer is the bridge to truly knowing God. Prayer is the bridge. Just this week, I was reflecting on how many people I have prayed with, and I lost count. I lost count. There were people I've seen in the hospital over and over this week, numbers of people, probably 6 hospital visits this week. There are people that I talked to on the phone and prayed with them, knowing the truth with and for them when they were struggling to know the truth within themselves. There are people I prayed with as my prayer partners twice this week. One prayer partner for probably 25 years, the other ever since I've been in ministerial school. Prayer is a constant bridge to living in God. And yet, here's the thing. As human beings, we often reserve prayer for our most desperate moments, don't we? Do you know, honest to God, who doesn't reserve that very special experience to only the most desperate and the most difficult of experiences? That's when we say, wow, I think I need a prayer. It's so funny as human beings. Even here in this community, many of you have chaplains that call and pray with you on a monthly basis, and you don't have to show me. But I know many of you don't answer those prayer calls. And you know it's your chaplain. You know it's your chaplain, but you're like, well, they can leave me a prayer. They can, and you might love it, but you don't answer that prayer call because they could pray with you in this moment about anything on your heart. I'll pass. Right? We also have the prayer circle, 9:30. Healing and world peace prayer circle. Really, do we not need healing and world peace? I'll get there. You see, as human beings, sometimes we find comfort in knowing prayer is available. We find that can be enough. It's like, I know it's there. I know chaplains are praying for me. I know that if things get really dire, then I'll reach out for a prayer. But till then, I'm good. And that's what human beings do. I'm poking fun. I have lived in those shoes a little bit myself. So I understand where that comes from. I get it. And just that human nature that resists God and resists prayer is the very thing that 2 Buddhist monks were talking about. I want to tell you this little story. So there were these 2 Buddhist monks, and they were getting older, and one had passed and the other had passed just after him. Well, the first one was I guess I would say reborn into the spiritual realms, the heavenly realms. And so he went into this evolved kind of ethereal kind of nature. And the other monk became a worm. So the first monk was looking around for his dear beloved friend, and he looked high and low. He looked for him everywhere, and he couldn't find him. He had great love for his friend. And finally, one day, he found him, a worm in the middle of a garbage heap. And he said, friend, I found you. I want to take you with me. I want to lift you up. Let's go up high. And the friend said, "You could leave. I'm good. I'm fine. I'm fine. Just go. I'm all right." And I think that we are like that with prayer, are we not? We can be lifted up to higher levels of being, but we stay in the mire of this human level of existence, and we just stay in it. We go, "I'm fine. I'm good. Everything's okay. I'll do the best I can." When instead, through our divine nature, we could be raised up. And we could use prayer as the vehicle to get us there. It is such an incredible thing. Such an incredible thing. I oftentimes think about how prayer is used in the unity movement. And one of the greatest ways it's used, and probably the most famous prayer in the unity movement, is the prayer for protection. We affirm that prayer every Sunday when we close out our time together. And so I wanted to share a little bit about the prayer for protection with you. First of all, it was written by James Dillett Freeman. He is considered Unity's poet laureate. And he wrote that prayer back in 1940. At that time, this country was in the throes of World War II. There were people calling Silent Unity, Unity's prayer ministry, night and day for prayers of peace and prayers for protection. There was concern and worry about our soldiers and the safety of our country. And so James Dillett Freeman, he wrote this prayer, and he actually did it for the Silent Unity workers for their Christmas prayer service. And as he spoke these words, they had such a powerful, healing, truth-filled effect on those who heard it, that it became the prayer as we know it in 1943. And I think about how powerful it was to say the prayer for protection. In fact, the prayer actually has gone to the moon. An astronaut, James Aldrin, took it to the moon. When the first two men walked on the moon, he was the second astronaut, and he placed the prayer for protection on the moon. This prayer is used universally. It is a prayer that ties us all together. And when I heard about all of the things going on in London yesterday, it was the first thing that came to me was to say a prayer. This prayer of protection for the people of London. The light of God surrounds you. The love of God enfolds you. The power of God protects you, and the presence of God watches over you. For wherever you are, dear souls, God is. This is a prayer that lives in our heart, and it has real meaning when we feel it from the core of our being. And when I think about our country and where we are today, and there's so much division, and there's just so much antagonism and fear and worry about peace and coming together as one, I say this prayer, the prayer for protection, and hold a vision that we all know that we are safe in God, that we, from the Christ of our being, will enfold each other and hold each other and be with each other. For God lives through us. We're not waiting for some God up here to change us. We're calling on God within to bring forward that which we declare as the living God. So I invite you today to open to the power of prayer and know that God is right here. In fact, God is nearer than the air.